All right, you guys ready on the right?
Yep.
Ready on the left? All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regularly scheduled City Council meeting for July 5th, 2022. My name is Mark Clark. I'm the mayor. I'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Clark.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Castle.
Here.
Councilmember Spear.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Neal.
Present.
Councilmember Mortensen.
Here.
Councilmember Providence.
Here. All right, next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address City Council on any item not on the agenda or a public hearing? If so, please step forward to the podium. See none. Next item on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda. Item number 1, approval of the June 20th, 2022 City Council minute meetings. Item number 2, consideration of ordinance number 773-22, adopting Chapter 8.25 of the Evans Municipal Code to regulate unreasonable noise, second reading.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, new business. Item number 3, consideration of 37th Street Phase 3 Design Service Additional Work Change Order. We'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and members of council, this is an item that follows up on an agenda item we had a couple months ago with the good news that we have received about a $1.5 million grant for phase 3 of the 37th Street widening. That's the phase that centers on 65th Avenue, the 65th Avenue intersection. So this follows up on that, allows us to design from west of that intersection to a point equal to the driveway that the buses use for Prairie Heights Middle School. So we'll go that far to the west and continue to the east, about to Arrowhead Drive there. Won't be able to quite get there, but it does extend that project. And of course, this takes care of the need for the design funding for that. I'll let City Engineer Mark Oberschmidt elaborate.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, Mayor Clark, members of council. As Randy said, the project expanded. The original project, when it was approved back in 2019, ended at the east side of the intersection of 65th Avenue. And I didn't like stopping at an intersection when you have a pretty busy intersection. So when this opportunity presented itself, we worked with Roxall and their team to come up with some additional work necessary to actually complete the intersection all the way through the intersections. It makes it a whole lot more efficient from everybody's perspective in the long run. And that's why we went after this. And then we presented that to the TAC and the MPO, and they've approved the funding. The additional services that require more survey than was already completed, additional environmental work, additional drainage work north and south on 65th Avenue, additional transportation work, because we're looking at whether it's going to be a standard signalized intersection or potentially another roundabout. And that needs to be looked at thoroughly before we make that decision and go forward with the horizontal and vertical alignment. And that kind of rolls all that into it. Plus, there's some additional properties that are impacted from a potential right-of-way purchase necessary to build the intersection, depending on what actually gets installed. So those are all the additional services that are going to come into play as part of this half-mile or so project. And that's what we're looking to get approval from tonight. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments for staff? We'll go ahead and start with Councilmember Spear.
Yeah, no, I have none. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from staff?
I have none.
Well, I have heard a lot of complaints about this intersection, so it's a little bit interesting to take a look at it. I think to see if it would improve the traffic flow with a roundabout. And especially with the school out there, if that would actually improve the traffic flow out there, that might be a good thing to take a look at.
We will do that.
Well, it's pretty straightforward to me, so. There's no additional questions or comments. I'd entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the additional work change order to the contract with Roxol for the 37th Street widening project design in the amount of $401,529.80, increasing the not to exceed contract amount to $2,248,741, and to authorize the extension of the work schedule with Roxol to June 2023.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to authorize the additional work change order to the contract with Roxol for 37th Street widening project design in the amount of $401,529.80, increasing the not to exceed contract amount to $2,248,741, and to authorize the extension of the work schedule with Roxol to June 2023. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, consideration of on-call hydraulic modeling service contract.
This is another item that is a follow-up to the utility feasibility study that was completed earlier this year, and you received a presentation on that. As part of that study, the consulting firm of AE2S developed a water model for our current water lines and any future lines. It's a model that can be used to evaluate the need for the size of the line and the amount of pressure being delivered in any particular zone. So that model is completed. Now the task before us is to be able to use it well, calibrate it, and make sure it's working. We need their expertise to do that. Part of their expertise will also be to train our current staff so that we can eventually operate it ourselves with some level of expertise. So I'll let Mark comment further on that.
Thank you, Randy. As Randy said, AE2S put together and updated our model. The old model, I think, was last updated somewhere around 2011. Something like that. Yeah. But it was antiquated. It was an old software that really nobody uses anymore. And in 10 years, software becomes essentially obsolete. So they brought it to a new level. They're able to adjust it, modify it, plan for it. The goal is, as Randy said, is for in this next 6 months or so, there may only be a few small things that we have them look at as it relates to potential development projects that are coming in at this point in time. But then over the next year or so, we would have them get us back up to speed on using a water model, because I haven't done one since about 2004, and have our crew be able to do that, and in either next year's budget or the following year, actually purchase the software so we have it in-house, so we can double check it ourselves if it's something small enough. But if it's something larger that requires a little more amount of time, we have this expertise on call to help us out in that case. And that's what we're looking for in this case, just for on-call services. It would never, I don't even think it'll get close to that $75,000 mark in 6 months, because we only have one thing that we want to have them look at here in the near future if the contract is approved.
Okay, great.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions or comments for staff? Councilmember Spear?
Yes, I have none. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seems pretty straightforward to me. So we entertain a motion.
I move to award master services agreement for on-call professional water modeling services to AE2S in the not to exceed amount of $75,000 for 2022, and authorize the mayor to sign the master services agreement.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to award the master service agreement for on-call professional water modeling services to AE2S in the not to exceed amount of $75,000 for 2022, and authorize the mayor to sign the master service agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item number 5, consideration of contract with Arctic Group for the Evans Police Station owners representative and project management services, and we'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As Brian gets settled, we're excited about bringing this item to you. This is after the site selection, the very next step in delivering a state-of-the-art new police station for you. It's a selection of an owner's representative and construction manager to be an extension of staff in eyes and ears and keeping track of the progress, making sure that we get quality architecture, quality contractor on board, and that they're doing what they should be doing according to spec. They will be, as I say, an extension of staff working design, construction, all the way through the warranty period on your and our behalf. So I'll let Brian discuss the procurement process for this consulting firm and why we believe that they're the best firm that can come on board and help us with this.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, Mayor Clark and members of council. Brian Stone, Senior Project Manager. Like Randy mentioned, we're here to discuss the owner's rep for the new police station. It is a huge project that's coming up, and like Randy mentioned, after the site selection, this is a group that'll come in and take us to that, to hit the ground running for design, construction docs, assisting with procurement of other items, and really through the construction process, we'll be an extension of staff, making sure that quality control is followed. So on April 22nd, we sent out an RFP through Rocky Mountain e-Purchasing as well as on the city website. We did receive 6 proposals back. And as we reviewed it as a selection committee, we followed a matrix on the evaluation process. And that was adhering to the RFP, the firm's related experience, which is a big one for the team, cost control strategies on the project. As we know with the construction industry and really anything right now, we have to be aware of that, as well as staff capacity and then price of their service. With the 6 proposals that we received, they ranged from about $249,000 to about $508,000. And then the hours really ranged as well. Estimated hours from some of the firms were as low as just over 2,100 all the way up to 5,500. So quite a range within that. So as we went through that scoring matrix, the committee brought in 2 firms to do an in-person presentation. That was NV5 and the Artaic Group. At the conclusion of these interviews, the selection committee really unanimously selected the Artaic Group to kind of push forward with. This firm's experience with similar projects stood out to this team. The project team that will work for us has done similar projects for police facilities in Steamboat Springs, the town of Erie, the city of Aspen. And as you know, with this project, it's not only the police station. A big part is what we're going to do with the remodel of the existing police station for admin services. And they've also done the remodel process for the town of Windsor. So reference checks confirmed what the scoring matrix revealed to the team with high marks with their forward thinking ahead of what was going to kind of come out, as well as the cost control strategies like was on our matrix. They looked at different ways to maybe value engineer, but not jeopardizing the design or the overall function of the facility. So all the reference we spoke with said that the Artaic Group had the project run smoothly and would have no hesitation to work with them again. So although they weren't the lowest bidder, like we talked about or I spoke of, the number of hours compared to their rate is really the determining factor. So if you combine their hourly rate, they were really competitive in the process. The 2 lower bids that came in below them really didn't meet the full spec. One left out the remodel piece and really focused on that. And the other one was kind of a one-man show and didn't have the full team aspect or experience with either one of those firms. So that being said, the 2022 budget does have $2 million included for the new police station, and a portion of this was identified to fund the owner's rep and project management services. So with that, with a quality proposal, their presentation, along with high recommendations from other cities, staff would recommend awarding these services to the Artaic Group in the amount of $368,340 with a 10% contingency to cover any changes, as well as it going over a couple years, the inflationary cost for a not to exceed amount of $405,174. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from staff, Councilmember Spear?
Yes, actually, hi, Brian. I see that they've worked with Steamboat, Windsor, Aspen. It seems that those are higher income producing towns. Are they aware that we're not rolling in the dough here and don't have a lot of revenue, and that we kind of be modest, I guess, with the same, I guess I want to make sure that they're not looking at us as a bankroll there. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, we're just kind of on limited funds, and I don't want to have like Glass Cathedral in mind, or something out of the realm of what we can afford.
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice thing is I did speak with the representative that was a project manager for the town of Erie. And so they hired a firm and set kind of a design, and then the bond didn't pass. As they went back, the bond passed the second time, but they didn't have any additional funding sources. So their budget was their budget. And this is 2 years following. And that's where she really mentioned that they had cost control strategies to make it fit within their budget, but also provide a quality service and facility at the end.
Okay, that's a little bit more of the lines of what I wanted to say. My brain's fried a little bit. So that was my question. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions or comments for staff?
Great.
No. All right, if there's not any other questions or comments for staff, I'll entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to award the owner's representative project manager service contract to the audit group in the amount of $368,034 with the 10% contingency use only with city management approval, not to exceed the amount of $405,174.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to award the owner's representative project management services contract to Archaic Group in the amount of $368,340 with a 10% contingency only to be used with city manager approval for a not to exceed amount of $405,174. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Brian. All right. Next item on the agenda, item number 6, consideration of global settlement agreement among water parties in connection with Windsor change application. We'll hear from staff.
Yes, as City Attorney Scott Krupp gets settled in, he's been very busy wearing the hat as your chief water attorney as well, monitoring and participating in a very lengthy settlement agreement having to do with the case that he wants to present to you tonight and get your concurrence in agreeing with this global water settlement.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. So we've talked before about you have a variety of water supplies and different water rights that supply your system. You've got CBT water, you're looking at NISP water. This is what we refer to as GLIC, which is Greeley Loveland Irrigation Company water. And it all came about from an application that was filed by Windsor to change their GLIC shares. And the city of Evans owns quite a few GLIC shares. GLIC shares are all originally irrigation rights. So when municipalities buy them, then they have to go through a change case to change them from irrigation use to municipal use. Evans has already done that with virtually all of their GLIC shares. Windsor, this application sought to change their GLIC shares. Greeley has done the same thing, but they have lots more to change still. And Loveland has already changed a lot of them, have a lot more to change. Almost all of those change applications are based on a report that was done, I think, back in the 1970s by an engineering firm called W.W. Wheeler. And they did a ditch-wide study of the entire GLIC system. And they said, if you're going to change from irrigation to municipal in this part, then you get this much water. If it's in this section, you get this much water. And over the last several decades, every time a new change case gets filed, all of the other municipalities decide on some other aspect of the Wheeler report to challenge and pick on. The result has been good for business, for engineers, and for attorneys, but expensive for municipalities. So this settlement was primarily the idea of Greeley, who probably has the most GLIC shares still to change. And their thought was, rather than having to sort of rehash this every so many years, why don't we all agree that this is how the Wheeler report should be interpreted? These are the volume metrics that you should get for your GLIC shares going forward. Since Evans had already changed almost all of their GLIC shares, we were not as concerned about future change cases. We wanted to make sure that it didn't do anything to the past decrees that you'd obtained for changing your water rights. So we have not been as active in the discussions as Greeley and Loveland and some of the others that still have a lot to change. The global settlement agreement you have in front of you is the result of those negotiations. They've been going on for about a year now. And I think it does accomplish the goal. Well, I'm guardedly optimistic that it accomplishes the goal of reducing the fights for future change cases. Again, not such a big issue for Evans. I did have them add language that specifically says, as long as we comply with the agreement, that they will not seek to change any of the existing Evans decrees. And that was the main thing we wanted to get in there. So, our recommendation is that you approve this global settlement agreement. And you may say, well, why are we seeing this one, but we don't see other ones? This case had broader ramifications than the other cases. A lot of the other cases we get into, we kind of monitor them, make sure they're okay. We always go through the Doug Seeley, your water engineer, to make sure that they feel they're okay, as well as your own engineering department, and check with Rick Card and Randy Reedy, and make sure that everyone agrees there's really nothing more that we need to do to protect. Since this one had broader ramifications, we wanted to bring it to City Council, and I think the other parties are doing the same thing with their City Councils. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions or comments for staff? Councilmember Spiro, we'll start with you.
No, I don't think I have questions.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments for staff?
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I do.
Yeah, go right ahead.
In the A on the recitals part of the agreement, it's the parties other than Milliken. Why was Milliken not involved? Hello?
Yes, sorry, Councilmember Spears, I had to go grab my copy of the settlement agreement, and Milliken is involved, and they're one of the settling parties.
It says the parties other than Milliken are parties. Oh, okay, I see. Other parties to Windsor's pending case. Okay.
Right. So.
Right.
Yeah, I believe Milliken is a signature to the agreement, and I don't know how many shares Milliken actually has to change still. It didn't seem like they had as many as some of the others, but they are, if you look back on page 22 of 23, they are also signatories to the agreement, so they'd be bound by it as well.
Yeah, I see that. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't skipping anything with Milliken.
No, we didn't.
Thank you.
Good question, though. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, staff? I'll just say that I'm glad that we're doing this here, and it protects the city of Evans as well, and it doesn't do anything to the already, water rights that we already have and are working with. So I'm in favor of this. If there's not any other questions or comment, I would entertain a motion.
I move the council authorize the mayor to sign the settlement agreement in conjunction with resolution of case number 18 CW 3042 filed by the town of Windsor in substantially the form attached.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the council authorize the mayor to sign the settlement agreement in conjunction with resolution of case number 18 CW 3042 filed by the town of Windsor in substantially the form attached. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
All right, next item on the agenda, item number 7, consideration of city manager executive search firm professional services agreement. And we will hear from staff.
Yes, I will turn this over immediately to Administrative Services Director, Ms. Julie Rader.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Julie Rader, Administrative Services Director. With the recent announcement of resignation for City Manager Jim Mecklenburg and now his departure, City Council initiated a search process for the replacement of the City Manager. The Mayor had appointed a selection committee comprised of Mayor Pro Tem Amanda Castle, Councilmember Tammy Mortensen, Economic Development Director Allison Moding, Senior Projects Manager Brian Stone, Human Resources and Risk Management Director Tammy Thompson, and myself. It's my understanding that Mayor Pro Tem Castle would like to take the lead on this presentation tonight, so I will turn things over to her.
Thank you. So as Julie said, we had a selection committee that went through the proposals that were received in conjunction with the request for proposal that was sent out. So, apologize. Roughly 2 weeks ago, that RFP went out. That week, we received 7 proposals back. Those proposals were then scored and reviewed based off of the qualifications and matrix shown in the report here. Once we had scored those, we came together as a group because we scored them individually, discussed, kind of made adjustments where we saw necessary based on discussions, because the benefit of looking at it individually and then collectively was that there were things that some found important and others hadn't considered until that conversation. So when we were done with that conversation, we had identified, I apologize, both Baker Tilly and Raftellus as the top 2. We debated for some time the potential of interviewing 2 or 3 or 4 firms, but it became clear that we were just trying to get to a number and perhaps not who we thought was really qualified, because we realized in picking a 3rd firm, we'd kind of be settling on something. So of the 7 RFPs, 4 of the 7 failed to meet the qualifications that were explicitly stated in our request for that proposal, which were extremely explicit. So that was one of those things that we went, hey, if they can't follow these instructions, we probably need to consider how that would translate as we walk through this process. And then the other firm that we were debating on, it was pretty clear in their proposal that they would be unable to deliver some of the deliverables that we were really looking for in a qualified firm. We then went and interviewed both Baker Tilly and Raftellus last week. They did an excellent job with the interview. Both of the individuals that were interviewed did a great job keeping to the time frame, because we had a lot of questions in a short amount of time. But at the end of the interviews, it was very clear to all of us that Baker Tilly was the best selection for our city. There were a few concerns, primarily just to ensure that we did get them in the appropriate amount of time, that they would be able to meet the needs of the city, that they would be able to provide the appropriate documents that we were looking for and those sorts of things. So Julie did an excellent job reaching out to Baker Tilly, and they said, hey, we hear you, and we're actually going to put this lead, I don't know, for principal or something on the committee to ensure that you get the best service possible, which was really great. They were just so responsive to any questions or concerns or anything. So that was really great to see. Based off of all of that and the experience we had, which with Baker Tilly really felt genuine and great for our city, it would be our recommendation to reward the proposal contract to Baker Tilly in the amount of $26,950, which was really well in line with all of the contracts that we saw. So, if there are any questions, I'm sure Julie, Tammy, or myself would be happy to answer them.
Julie, do you have anything to add?
As referenced under the financial summary, a preliminary budget revision will be necessary in that amount, so that could be brought forward in the future when we have an ordinance to present to you. And nothing else to add.
I know Tammy, you're on the committee as well. Do you have anything to add?
Amanda covered it pretty well, but the one thing that stood out for me with the two that we interviewed was Baker Tilly had actually done their research on the city of Evans. They were able to speak to things that we had on our website, that we had put on social media, things like that. Not that Raftellus didn't do well, but it kind of was on that part, a vague answer from them. And I was sitting there and all I could think was, man, I was on that committee where we did the new master plan and everything, and you're saying, I don't know, I'd have to see. I was like, So, and I know they're busy. I know they have a lot, but Baker Tilly actually made that effort. And the person that we spoke with was extremely personable and very well educated and well spoken. So, just between the two there, that was another standout for me when they know about the city,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, they did great.
All right. Is there any questions or comments for staff or Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember Mortensen on this item? Councilmember Spear, we'll start with you.
No, thank you. I don't have anything.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I just have a comment. I think just based off what was mentioned, it sounds like we picked a really good firm to definitely help us with this. So I'm for this.
And one thing I'll point out that it wasn't mentioned too is I understood that they have like a 1 year guarantee or something to that.
1 year. Yep.
If for whatever reason the city manager we terminated with for cause, or we just figured it wasn't a good fit for us after a while, they would come back and also part of their services help us find another one as well. So I like that as well. So I'm in favor of this. I also want to make a real quick comment to, of course, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Mortensen, as well as Julie and Tammy and Brian and Allison. Thank you very much for all of your hard work on this committee. I really do appreciate it. So thank you very much for that. If there's no any questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to authorize Mayor Clark to enter into a professional service agreement with Baker Tilly US LLP in the amount of $26,950 to provide executive search services to the city of Evans to help identify the next city manager, and a preliminary budget revision in the amount of $26,950 within the general fund.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to authorize Mayor Clark to enter into a professional services agreement with Baker Tilly US LLP in the amount of $26,950 to provide executive search services to the city of Evans to help identify the next city manager, and a preliminary budget revision in the amount of $26,950 within the general fund. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, reports, city manager.
Just wanted to say that I hope everybody enjoyed the 4th of July and the Greeley Stampede. Hats off to the Evans Chamber and here within Evans staff to Allison for organizing a float that was in the parade yesterday. It was great with Mayor Clark and Councilmember Neal and several staff members on the float, and seeing at least seemed like half of Greeley at the showing up to the parade. So that was a lot of fun. Hopefully it'll become a new tradition. The other thing I just wanted to mention to you to please take a look at in your council updates provided at the end of the packet. You do have the April sales tax collections there. I think we've learned long and hard not to ever gloat, but we're very, very pleased to see the industrial category, comprised obviously mostly with oil field services for us, finally rebounding to what was 2015 levels. So sales tax overall about 20% up over last year, and that industrial category in particular bouncing back really nicely. So good signs, good reason for optimism, but in a very uncertain world. So, and those are my comments for this evening.
One thing you did forget to mention about Stampede, Councilmember Neal and I were throwing in a plug for Evans Heritage Days. So there was a lot of kids coming up trying to get candy because they're expecting candy out of their bag. So Councilmember Neal was, come to Evans Heritage Days. We throw candy and we kept going at it throughout the town, throughout the parade, saying that. So it was a lot of fun. And actually, we did see a lot of Evans residents out there as well. But it was a great time. But yeah, we definitely advertised Heritage Days while we were out there. So hopefully, we might have to buy some extra candy this year with all those additional people showing up, just to say. So,
That's cute.
but it was a good time. All right. Next item on the agenda, report city manager, or city attorney, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just one thing, last week was CML conference, which I attended, and good sessions, lots of people. The legislative update is always sort of the highlight for us municipal attorney types, and they went through lots and lots of bills, and I'll try and filter through them and bring ones to city council that I think apply most to Evans here in the next couple of months. Our office did hold an open house for all of the cities and towns that we represent, and Evans was well represented at that as well. Councilmember Johnson was there, and I appreciate you stopping by, as well as staff members. Allison Moding was there, Assistant City Attorney Drew Lymans, Curtis Cunningham, who I think I just met there. So it was a good time, and to encourage other council members to come, we promise a repeat performance again next year. So please mark your calendars. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address city council on any item?
No, Mayor.
See another line. All right, moving on, next item, executive session.
I move to go into executive session to receive advice from the city attorney regarding specific legal questions and to direct negotiators in connection with the city's IGA with Greeley for water services, and to confer regarding possible acquisition of real property for a police station site pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Section 4, subsection A, B, and E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into an executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes, and we'll go into executive session. Thank you, everybody.